Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. So I watched the presidential debate or town hall on CNN. The only thing I found of interest to me, to be blunt, was where they talked about the guns. Of course I would, because, this is a gun podcast. But what was interesting was he had mentioned that there's a lot of people that would be up the creek, basically, if they didn't have their firearm. He's correct. I mentioned it many times on this podcast that response times in northwest New Mexico aren't the greatest. It's geography more so than anything, but at the same time, most of us, kind of ANCAP type personalities won't call the police anyway. We'll deal with our own problems, unless it's big enough that we actually think the law will do something. We're in a different place nowadays where there's a lot of people like me that they will not call the cops. More people, especially leftists, which is funny because they actually outright demonize the cops. I just want the cops to do their damn job. We paid for them. They're supposed to be protecting us, so their onus is to us. So, but you see leftists actually outright going to defund police. Now, I, in the past, have said that I'm very anti-law enforcement, or have been as of late. But I will tell you that there is a place and time that law enforcement has its place. Today is supposed to be their day of remembrance for law enforcement agents who have fallen. And I feel for them because there's a lot of turd people in the world. If you think about law enforcement as it is, I'm not being a statist, but you think about what a cop's supposed to do, and what we've been pushing them into doing lately is totally outside of what they were taught to do, what they were trained to do. And there definitely needs to be more training involved there. And it doesn't help that they don't hold up, or they have those bad apples that do stupid things that make people like me want to back away from them. It goes a long way to say that I've stepped away from the government for a lot of things. Case in point, if you look at Massachusetts right now, Massachusetts is a battleground for basically, they're calling it zip code gun control. Now, what they mean by this is that they're going into cities and they're zoning them such that it's impossible to own a firearm or to own a business that does anything with firearms. This is backhanded gun control. And I'm to the point more often than I should be, and I say this because it's our country, it should be universally said that your rights are your rights, and that you have them no matter where you live. But I'm actually okay with blue cities burning. I'm to the point where they keep voting for this stupidity. Let them burn. Look at New York, look at Chicago, look at LA, look at San Francisco. They were once beautiful cities. Let their policies burn them. It's to the point where you watch these things like the subway incident in New York, or the crap in downtown San Francisco. I mean, literally human feces. That they keep voting for this stuff. Let it happen. California's looking at allowing reparations somewhere to the tune of $2 billion that they're wanting to have reparations for black folks that live in San Francisco. Now, think about that. California was never a slave state. No one in California ever owned a slave because it wasn't possible. So how are they the ones that are trying to push for reparations so much? It's that agenda that they're trying to push. Watching the town hall, what I noticed was that the interviewer, or the person emceeing the town hall, had an agenda. She was trying to get sound bites off of Trump. And they didn't necessarily go the correct way. I will tell you that Trump's still stuck on the election being a fraud, rather than looking at what actually happened. The past election wasn't really fraudulent. There was just a lot of laws and rule changes that were allowed to happen that those people that really have no action. We've seen it on both sides of the aisle when it comes to the political spectrum. These people get into office and they're not willing to do anything. They're just willing to do the status quo or the bare minimum. And that's what I believe happened this last election. I've worked in the Bureau of Elections in San Juan County, and I can tell you for New Mexico to have a case of fraud in New Mexico that had to do with elections, you'd have to get a lot of things to happen behind the scenes that I don't know that you could. And with that said, I imagine the other states that are it's just as cumbersome. I will tell you that there's probably fraud. Without a doubt, there's fraud, but it's not to the scale that makes up an election. And the longer that Trump and his acolytes stick to that and say that fraud was the key reason, rather than ballot harvesting or rather than people making rule changes and no one standing up to them, they're going to continue to lose the elections. I'm to the point where it's hard to say this. I still vote, but I'm not seeing the relevance in it anymore because it doesn't seem to change the needle. We've had people from the left. We've had people from the right. The people that still advocate for endless war still win. No one's really being served as the American people. I talked to a leftist today. He's he's actually a pretty decent guy. He's a good friend of mine, actually. And he's actually come around on a lot of issues because of me, and I've come around a little bit to see his points, not necessarily coming to his side. He still believes in AOC being a good person, where I see her as the banality of evil. The lady has done way more evil things or stood by and allowed evil things to go. That's evil. People keep saying vote for the lesser of two evils, and I think I've done that. At least the last election, that's how I saw it. I don't know that I could do that again, and that's because I don't agree with either side anymore. I look at the conservatives. I used to be a conservative, and the problem I see is that they have a lot of good ideas. They're the party of let's debate when you're trying to debate people that don't want to debate. They've taken sound bites or those little bits and pieces that they can find, and that's their gospel now. You cannot debate a person like that because there's no option to them. They're not going to change their mind. Their mind's already set. And that type of person tends to be the one that, we'll give up on this little issue. We'll give up on universal background checks because that's not that big of a deal. It is. It is because we have had, in the 2A community, we've been dying from a death from 1,000 cuts because we've conceded so much ground. And it's time to take it back. It's looking like the courts are on our side. It looks like there's a lot more going for us in the legal system if these people actually hold people to the fire. I keep saying, I'm sorry about that. I look at the House right now, and there's some hope there, but then every time that there's hope, what usually happens is the House turncoats. There's a group of people that turncoats. And with the stuff that's going on with Biden himself, if you don't know what's going on, Hunter's laptop is real. That's been proven multiple times. The stuff from his laptop is coming out more and more, and there's more and more eyes on the malfeasance that he's had, and when I say Biden has had. And it's drawing enough attention media-wise that they're going to have to address this. So it doesn't make sense to spend what political capital you have going after guns right now when you're trying to basically save yourself from going to jail. And I think that's where Biden really is. And I think they're a little terrified that stuff gets some sunshine and gets some air. And the more people talk about it and look into it, the more you'll find that Biden really is a bad dude. There is such a thing as Biden Inc. Look it up. Everyone in the Biden family has some blood on their hands from how much money they've gotten from China, Ukraine, and other places. And this all sounds like tinfoil hat conspiracy, but the FBI and 50 other intelligence agencies collaborated to hide Hunter Biden's laptop before the last election. And there's enough independents that had they known that that was a real thing and that it wasn't a psyop like they had ploned it off to be, it probably would have decided the election. We ended up with COVID hitting us, and COVID had a lot of people pissed off on the conservative side that probably would have crossed the aisle just to see if we could get other people to side with us. And that's not what happened. Instead, we ended up with someone who was even more draconian with the lockdowns and everything else. There's still vaccine mandates for a lot of people because of Biden, even though all that stuff's been repealed and pulled back. We're 3 years on, and they've just now, 2 days ago, ended the COVID emergency worldwide. What does that do for the world economy? Well, you're seeing it in slow motion. You're seeing the American dollar go down in its value, and there's not a hell of a lot you can do to hedge your bet as a working person. You can leave it in the bank or you can take it out, but it doesn't matter. What happens is your purchasing power is going away. I'm more so concerned with central bank digital currencies. That's the currency that if they go to a digital, like a crypto version of the dollar, that they can turn it off if they don't want you to buy something or if you bought too much gas. Rather than deal with gun control, we'll just not let you buy ammunition with your money. Or you're considered a political dissident now. We're going to lock you out of your account entirely. That's the type of power that I'm worried about the government getting. And there's still not a lot of people that are looking at that. If you look at Thomas Massey today brought up something that's very important because it kind of ties into the CBDC stuff, and that's the E-Verify. So if you don't know what that is and why this relates to the 2A, E-Verify allows you to verify your citizenship instantly so that people can hire you to work. But remember, if every time we give some bit of power to the government, how they can turn that against you. If they're allowing you to go to work one day because you've been digitally verified, what's to stop them from turning it off another day if they deem you an enemy combatant? If they deem you a terrorist. This is the type of power that we've ceded in the past after 9/11. They used that tragedy to go after, what's it called? The Patriot Act. There we go. The Patriot Act has basically allowed them to spy on American citizens carte blanche. Julian Assange, Eric Snowden, they leaked stuff and showed stuff. Eric Snowden didn't actually, he leaked stuff, but he had no idea what the content was, where Julian Assange actually was a journalist and he was leaking things that were related to the stories he was actually reporting on. We need Assange to be pardoned. They've ruined that man. They went after him financially. They went after him legally. They went after him, his character, and said that he had raped some people or a person. Right now, he's living in exile, and they're trying to get him exiled. What do you call it? Sent back to the United States. And why is that? It's so they can prosecute him for what they see as crimes that really aren't crimes. They let the American people know what the government's up to. We're looking at a situation nowadays where reporters don't have credibility because they lost it. You can't keep coming forward and lying on behalf of the government without being seen. The COVID stuff was a really, really big eye-opener, especially to people like me. When you saw Operation Mockingbird in full color, you could change different news channels and see the same narrative without any alteration. This is the stuff that a lot of conspiracy people would say has been happening for years, and a lot of us, me particularly, would say that wasn't the case. Now you can't deny it. We've been played. We've been played for a long time. And I have some listeners on here who have been like, yep, you're right. And we've been played for a long time because they knew a long time ago. why else would they want to take away your weapons or your right to defense? It's because they want you to be beholden to the government. Prepper used to be, or has become in recent terms, a right-wing thing. It's not. Prepping is for you to make sure your family and your lifestyle can continue as long as it can if there's an emergency. The first time ever that they started talking about having a go bag was actually because of the forest fires in the Southwest. You can look that up. The stuff they use for incident management and control at the law enforcement level was designed around forest fires because they happen. And if you live in the Southwest, you know they happen. That's why you do keep a go bag. You can be in the city and there can be a fire on the edge of the city and you probably are going to want to evacuate if it's bad enough because that fire can change really quick, especially if you're in a place like Durango where there's a lot of forested areas all around your entire city. So, the best thing you could do is be as self-sufficient as you can. I'm looking at trying to figure out how many chickens I can raise in the city and how I can make my backyard more into a garden. Why? Because it's good knowledge to know, and with the environment we're living in right now, I know I can hunt and fish, but there's some things you can't live on without growing. And that's where I'm at right now. When I watch this stuff, it's daunting to see the left go so aggressively after someone who did nothing but stand up for the little guy. I'm not a Trump guy, but I do see that they are demonizing the guy a lot for basically saying, no, that's not the American way and that's not how we're going to do it. Where's the rest of our country? If we had a real war, what would happen? In that town hall, Trump said he would end the support for Ukraine and end people dying. That was his whole purpose there. What's wrong with that? There were people in the audience that were visibly pissed off when the man said that all he wanted to do was to stop people from dying. I thought that's what our government was supposed to do. I thought that was the American way. 30 years or 20 years into war on terror, we're now so aggressive that we're willing to start World War III because Ukraine is not a NATO state. And to be blunt, NATO's outdated and not needed anymore anyway. I'm okay with letting those folks fight their own battle. Eventually, we will have to get into it, without a doubt. I say that because they will do some sort of horrible atrocity or use nukes that will draw us in. But to be blunt, NATO, for a long time, drained the United States, and it's time to let them twist in the wind and start carrying some of their own water. Just my own thoughts on that. We're fighting battles here in the United States to try to keep our basic freedoms. I shared this stuff last night, or this morning, I should say, about the ATF going door to door. And I realized afterwards that there's more memes put out by Mr. Guns and Gear and other people now around that same story. And those memes are actually becoming part of the lexicon of how we get information. That's one of the cool things about Twitter is you can see a meme and then find where they linked it to another story and read the story to see what it is and why it's credible or if it's not. But it always piques that interest of what the hell's going on here. The ATF should not be going door to door, period. There should be no federal agent or agencies that are willing to go door to door and break law. But the ATF seems to want to do that. How do we fix it? As I get ready to do other things in my life and as my business continues to run into things from the state that I have to jump hoops through to get things going, it's frustrating because there's a huge bureaucracy that needs to go away. I got my leftist friend, that one I was talking about earlier, to actually agree with me that if we got rid of a third of the government right now, the government would probably still be okay. I'm okay with that. Taxation is theft. How many people are we paying for that don't actually do anything? Why isn't there a cost-benefit analysis for every department in the federal government or the state government to see what benefit they give the American people? As we watch the border get overrun, and we have a federal government that has a department that is their whole job is to protect and defend that border. If they can't do it or won't do it, why are we paying them? Why are we paying the ATF millions of dollars for fraudulently claiming that they're field agents when they're not? And why aren't more people pissed off about it? I leave you with those questions. Like, share, subscribe, be great.